guess I should hit, pretty healthy going into camp. And we obviously Calais is on the NFI. Nothing we're concerned about long term, just a personal medical thing he took care of, and won't affect his performance. But he'll be starting a little bit later than the rest of the guys, but nothing we're concerned about long term. And then there was a little more D Ledbetter. Guess he's holding out, didn't show up. So we'll deal with that, or you guys can deal with it however y'all want. Ready to roll?
We're finding him every day, don't worry.
Okay. Well. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, this time you sit down.
I know.
Hear me out for a second. As far as Kyle Pitts goes, did you anticipate him practicing?
He'll be out there, yeah. And then with all our guys, guys are return to play, but Kyle will be out there.
And in terms of what how is this ramp-up process different for you this year than maybe last year or the year before? Like, have you changed anything from the first 2 years that you've learned?
We always look to tweak things. Yeah, I mean, it just depends on what you're dealing with. If you've got a couple veteran guys that need a different ramp-up timetable, you're adjusting that. You're looking what worked, what didn't. Feel pretty good about our process overall. Sometimes it is a little bit of luck, but we've had pretty good numbers. If you look at those metrics about guys that practice and guys that have stayed pretty healthy. I mean, so that's that doesn't mean that we're not looking to improve that, Mike. So we do, but these guys, we'll have some veteran guys that will be on different timetables. You may see them take those rest days, which we've done before with CP. We may look to do that with some other guys.
You mentioned Calais before. He had said yesterday that there was a chance that he was going to be in kind of a different type of plan to make sure he's ready for week one. And see, you're not seeing kind of thought process overall throughout camp.
Yeah, this wasn't something that we were doing to game the whatever. I mean, that's not that was he actually. It's a personal thing. That's what you always. It's a fine line. We talk so much about injuries, and sometimes you got to be respectful when it's something that's not football related, but it's nothing concerning. But with Calais even being, if he was full go right now, we'd still be different ramp-up plan.
It's still different at the start of this year than they have years before. I mean, there's a sense, at least on our end, that there's a lot more expectations, or at least ability to be better than you've been to this point. Do things start to feel different for you and the players, or a different tenor?
I think every team you've got is going to be different. Certainly, we're not dealing with some of the same obstacles or challenges that we've had, and you're at a different point in the program. But your expectations need to be high every year, and you've got to prove that. Whether you're coming off a Super Bowl win or you're coming off a crappy season, when you're coming in here, you've got to earn that. Every team's going to be different, no matter how many players you bring back, or new players. Every team's it's going to have its own story, and that's the hardest thing. Not only to achieve success in the NFL, but you got a lot of respect for people that sustain success. Obviously, we need to. Our goal every year has been, no matter who we've had here or what the challenge has been, we've tried to fight like hell to get into the playoffs. But certainly nobody's going to have higher expectations than I do for this team and myself.
Move on with Caleb Huntley yesterday. I imagine that was a tough one for you because of the way you feel about Caleb.
Well, Josh, it's all our players. Everybody's unique, just like all of y'all are. But, that's where it's a hard part of this business is separating personal feelings to being objective and doing what's best for the team. It doesn't mean it'll be the end of the road for Caleb. Things come up, guys. That guys may be trending, and those are tough decisions you got to make. But we've had to make a lot of them. We've had guys that certainly we would have loved to have brought back, but we couldn't for different reasons. Maybe some of them financial, and then we've had, it's just the way it goes. But it doesn't mean you don't cherish the time you get, because you get new players coming and going, coaches. Certainly I'll miss Dean day to day. Doesn't mean we're not fired up like hell to have Ryan and Jerry and Hux and those, all the new guys. It's just the way it goes, unfortunately, in this business.
That running back position there's been a lot of talk this week about, do you need to handle it differently? In a lot of ways, because of what you see with Caleb and guys like this, there's just such attrition and such wear on guys. Do you have an opinion on?
Yeah, I've got a lot of opinions, Josh, but I'm not gonna give a State of the Union of what I think. It's just, we have our philosophy. I think in any industry you see trends, you see a lot of copycat, you see a lot of groupthink. Things evolve, they change. We certainly try to look at every situation unique. I think so. But I'm not going to go into other teams' issues or whatever their philosophies are. Yeah, I've got a lot of personal feelings, but I'll keep them personal.
It's still fun.
I know.
How big was it to get Michael Pruitt that you did?
Yeah, we're fired up to have Prue. Again, another guy. I don't think you can have enough good football players on your team. And you talked about it sometimes, attrition in this game and depth. And I think competition brings out the best of everybody. But Prue had a really good season for us. I've been with him off and on since 2018 when we signed him off the Houston practice squad when Delaney Walker went down week 1. And Prue's evolved his game. And, you can always tell when, you reintroduce somebody or you announce who's there and guys get all fired up. And so Prue's teammates like him. I enjoy working with him, so hopefully he can continue to improve and help us.
Just some 14 personnel.
Good. I see 05. I see, we'll try to buck conventional wisdom.
How do you see the left guard competition starting again?
Way we'll develop these guys, early on. You'll see Henny out there with the first group, but certainly your expectation is for Chris Linson to be the right guard and Jake to be left tackle and Caleb, but you got to keep an open competition and guys are on different timetables. But you'll see Henny get the first crack at it, and we'll see where the rest of those guys go from there.
When you look at the rookies that you've had here the longest, do you have a preset expectation for their learning curve coming into this now that you're going to be in full practice as far as pads and everything is concerned?
In terms of either anybody particular you're talking about or just?
Not in particular, just in general, when you look at the rookies, how quickly do you expect them, or have you noticed that they have been able to pick things up quicker? Do you even look at that going in and you just look at it and go, I know it's not where it needs to be right now, day by day?
Well, I think that's the thing when we bring somebody in here, especially when you're making a big investment in draft capital or in free agency, you need to have a plan for them. And certainly, the guys you take early, they're going to get the attention. That's a big investment. And so there are things we do in the spring that, it's not like with Bijan, it was more of a passing camp. And there's some things we thought he really showed and improved on. But, there's some things now that you'll see him carrying the ball and all those guys, Tyler, Carlos, CP will get his carries, but those are things you work on, and everybody's different. We've all seen it. I've said it many times. There's some guys that start really slow and they have Hall of Fame careers. There's other guys that have a one-year wonder and you never hear from them again. So with all those guys, we're confident, and the guys we're certainly counting on early that they're on schedule.
You said you got a little amped up in the morning meeting, just with the guys. What gets you just so pumped up the first day of camp?
Yeah, I know everybody's optimistic this time of year, but this is what we do. You're back at it. You're back to football, and you just don't want to forget certain things. You don't want to take it for granted because we've got a lot of new faces here. Here's how we operate. Here's things that we want to emphasize early on as we get to this ramp up, and you want to make sure everybody's on the same page and try not to pontificate too much, but you don't sleep a lot just out of excitement.
What kind of team identity do you want your guys to take on during training camp? That seems to be a focus for a lot of teams, and you have some new pieces on offense and defense.
Certainly the way that we want to play on the lines of scrimmage, but we'll evolve. We'll evolve to the strength of our personnel. Guys, we try to focus a lot on daily improvement. I think it's whether you have great expectations or low expectations, you've got to go earn that every day, and you've got to be able to correct certain things that when you challenge players, if they may make an early mistake, and not to repeat it. But as identity, we want to continue to build. We want to be a very physical team up front, and we want to be evolving. We want to play to the strengths of our personnel, and we want to be a smart football team. We did a decent job, not trying to hurt ourselves. Pre-snap penalties, those are the things that you can control. Now we got to get better. We were low in penalties, but we had some critical penalties and we had some touchdowns called back. We had some turnovers in the red zone. Those are things to take the next step. You can look at any advanced statistic and make yourself feel good or bad. In the day, we gotta take another step, and we gotta continue to put touchdowns on the board, and we gotta continue to get off the field and get into some advantageous pass rush situations. So those are things that take the next step. But our identity up front, we're going to be a smart physical team, and I know every coach kind of says that, and you don't emphasize it, but we've tried to emphasize that. We feel like we've got things to back that up. But just an example with Chris, we got a lot of Lindstrom. You signed him to a big contract, and the expectation is even higher for Chris, and he knows that. And you reward the right guys, and he's got to go earn that every year. And those are the things that we want to continue to push.
Can I ask about your recent USO trip in June? What was that experience like for you and your team, and how's that build morale among players, and why is that important to have?
Well, I think a lot of our guys, not just the USO, but a lot of our guys have done terrific things in our community, locally or back at their hometown. I know Kyle had a back-to-school event Saturday. Richie Grant had one in his hometown, Fort Walton. And then when you get opportunities to give back, I think it's you need to do that because we're given a hell of a platform to do a job we love to do. And in the USO tours, we've got a great relationship. Our organization does in that space. So it was really cool. That trip was unique. I did a one-day trip last year domestically, but to go internationally, it was cool. To go to Germany, and we were with Steve Cannon, and Steve's a West Point guy, and Ryan Nielsen went, Felipe went, Koo went, and Zoe. So it was unique because we didn't just go to the base, take some pictures. We got to go to Eastern Europe and places I never thought I'd see, and it gives you a great perspective. We're fortunate we have the ability to do that. Whether you travel those trips or you get a chance to travel, it gives you a lot of perspective. And certainly going to Eastern Europe was eye-opening in a great way, and getting to visit those troops, and you realize how young they are. I mean, 18, 19-year-old, 20-year-old soldiers, when we were visiting the U.S. Army, the post, unbelievable perspective. And we got to see the country in Romania and drove across it. And so it was different. It was unique, and it was an awesome experience.
Will there be any limitations with Kyle Pitts out there, like pulling him out certain things or monitoring, or was he a full go?
Well, you're not going to ask him to do 100 plays a day. But with a lot of our guys, these ramp-up periods, we're only out there for 90 minutes. And there's only so many reps. We'll do a little more individual. We'll obviously have some 7-on-7 and team, and we'll just kind of build off that every day. And there'd be guys, whether they're coming off an injury or we got to assess that. But it's hard for me to say, hey, look, we're not playing a game tomorrow. But the fact that he's out there practicing, he's going to take some reps, and we'll be smart. But that's a very encouraging sign.
Do you gauge Desmond as far as where he ended last season to now, and with all the new pieces that have come in? Do you sort of give him a clean slate, or do you want him to continue to pick up from where he left off and expect things to go to another level?
Well, yeah, that's the expectation for all of us, right? We all have something to prove every day. You got to prove that you have the discipline to come in here and, as a coach or a player, and continue to grow and improve. But I think if you don't, then you'll get passed up, and so that's with all of us. We've got stuff to prove with Desmond to take. Yeah, he's got 4 starts under his belt. It'll be a different team that we line up with this year. Obviously, fundamental, there's things we've asked him to do, and Dave Ragone has asked him when we've challenged him. Very confident, but he's got to go out there and prove it. And all those quarterbacks, Taylor, Logan, the way we operate. But we certainly, with all of us, take another step.
Very golden. Throughout the spring, you guys had said that you started different plans. Does that continue now, or at some point you have to?
And you got to assess. Obviously Eddie hasn't played 2 of the last 3 years. Showed up yesterday. Good to see Eddie. He's got some other personal things he's dealing with, so we'll just have to take it day by day with Eddie. That's what I'm saying. Everybody's got a unique situation. You've got 90 guys on the roster. Really, I guess 91. Avery's on IR, and Avery's here, and he's got his own plan. So that's stuff we'll have to work through, Mike. But yeah, you're very conscientious of guys that have missed a lot of time.
Just to be clear,
You won't practice today.
Okay, that's what
Yeah.
Is anyone else not expected to practice other than obviously Calais?
It'd be Calais and Eddie. And there's some guys will do more than others, but yeah.
Did you watch the quarterback series? What do you think of it?
No, I didn't. I got a big family, so you certainly hear, and he didn't call me over the summer and tell me that there was some fantastical storyline that I needed to address. So I didn't. I'm sure it was like what I told Mike in spring. Probably along those lines.
I know there's always cross-training that goes on, but with Jalen Mayfield, will he be starting?
He'll be at right tackle right now.
sticking with kind of the idea of those day 2 picks in the draft, when you look at a guy like Matthew Bergeron, I know you're talking about Matt Hennessy taking the majority of the reps with the first team, but how much of Matthew Bergeron's development mimics kind of what y'all did with Richie Grant a few years ago, where it's kind of like taking steps at a different pace, maybe than just throwing somebody out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're very conscientious of that. He's making a position switch. That was a unique situation with Richie. We had 2 veteran guys back there, and we wanted to bring them along the right way. And then, he was forced into some slot, we want to call it big safety, nickel, whatever he wanted in certain packages, just because of necessity when Isaiah went down. So you have to be able to adapt. They're all different with Matt. If he's, again, he'll have every opportunity to earn if he's ready to go, and the best guy will play. And but I think starting out, it's a long journey. You've got these 3 preseason games. We'll have the joint practice with Miami. A lot of games. You've got the 3 preseason games. You've got 17 regular season, and you're hoping to play a few more after that. And with all the rookies or young guys, whether it's there'll be great competition across the board, whether it's inside a corner between D and Mike Hughes and Clark. Best guy will play. And they're, you certainly anticipate with certain veterans that you hope they're able to help you. But if there's a young guy that's better than one, I'm not doing the team, doing my job if I'm not playing the best guy.
You're sporting some new facial hair? Is that just a personal choice?
It's a lifestyle change, it's not for everybody.
Are you going to keep it for the season?
See how it goes.
How confident are you in the wide receiver room, especially with veterans like Scotty Miller and Mac Hollis, who started breaking out last year?
Yeah, very confident. And that's the thing. Again, I guess you irritate a lot of the traditional fantasy football people because you don't put them in boxes here, and I think I've always bothered those people the way we probably played in Tennessee and going back, who knows. So we've got a lot of unique skill players, and Mac and Scotty are certainly part of that, and so is Kadero Hodge. He's another guy I think earn more reps, if he continues. I think every time we, I think in hindsight, Hodge is a guy, I'm glad he's back. He probably should have done more for us last year. And so there's a lot of expectations on him. I mean, he's a hell of a gunner, but he's also a good receiver, and he made some big plays. And, as you're going through it logistically, and he's a guy that I think's been undervalued. But, again, he's got to go back out and earn it. So we're very confident in some of those veterans we brought in. Mac's another guy. He's a guy that's come up the hard way in the NFL. He's been with a lot of teams. He's had production wherever he's gone. He's made those teams better. And sometimes I think that's what you got to evaluate, the impact on winning. And I would make a strong argument that Mac helps teams win and does. It's not just, and I go back to that fantasy thing, and I love it. It's been great for the game. It's one of the, in my opinion, the smarter things that the league's embraced because it's created more fans, and that's not a shot at it. But what I'm saying is like sometimes you may just see targets that the ball was actually thrown to. I mean, they're the primary, and then you have these stats, the old traditional stats, and guy may have 6 catches for 80 yards, and you may get beat by 3 touchdowns. Like, oh man, he's a hell of a player. And then you look at the other 40 plays he's in, loafer on the backside, extra guy in the hole, hitting the running back, point of attack. And that's what I'd argue too. We go back to Drake. Not only to Drake, and he finished the year really strong. And why I'm so fired up about Drake London, look at his plays without the ball in his hands. Those are the impact that will never show up on a stat sheet unless you're a real nerd like me and the other coaches in the league that spend way too much time pouring over game film. You'll see the real value of a guy like Drake London. Now, obviously, our objective is to win and score as many points as we can, and so you just got to take it relative. They're not all the same. And I'll give you a story back in the tight end I coached in Delaney Walker. His best statistical season, we were dog, whatever, and he caught a ton of balls. He caught 90-something ball. I had him on the top of my head, and we improved as a team, and we said, hey, your production may go down. I think the next year he played better and he caught 60-something football. He had 60-something receptions, and we improved by 6 wins. Because a lot of times people take that for granted. If you're playing a lot of 2-minute and you're a receiver and you're down big, and you're going to have a lot of opportunities. Now, what's impressive is when you're on a 14-win team and you got 100-something catches. That's impressive.
Anything else?
Coach, how difficult is you talk about, wide receivers who are going to be able to contribute on the field and on special teams? How difficult, how do you weigh, like, what they're able to bring to the table on offense versus what they're able to bring to the table on the special teams when you start getting to that third and fourth wide receiver role?
Yeah, it goes back to this, help you. How are you constructed? I mean, what do you think your best personnel is on critical downs? Some years you played in 12 personnel if you think that's your best, and so you don't want on those critical downs, 2 minute, third down. I mean, you can make it all critical, but what I'm saying is when you get in those obvious passing downs, who are your best players? I mean, you get in the situation where that could be CP out there wide out, and you may have somebody else and then a running back, or vice versa. Those are the things you've got to evaluate. And then when it comes to that, who's up on game day, right? If you put 48 this year, you can put 49 if you want to go third quarterback. It's their impact on the game plan. And if you're not an every down starter, you better be able to back up other positions. So you may have to be the backup X. You may have to go in there and play F for us, and everybody calls them different. The S, whatever term you want to use. But for us, you're not the starting X. You better be able to back up the X. Better be able to back up the F. You better be able to help fourth down. And those are all situations you weigh week in and week out and how you're constructed. I mean, you may feel great about going into the season. You may have 6 really good wideouts, and you may lose 3 of them, before week 1. And so that's the puzzle, and that's the fun part, and that's why you're trying to develop depth.
Arthur, just curious, with all the scuttlebutt about running backs now not getting paid, as a guy who's run the ball very well over the years with a variety of different backs in a variety of different ways. Is there any value to their argument that they're not, and just in your opinion, as far as what they're saying?
I would love to talk more about it, but Josh did his damnedest to get me to talk about it. It's just, not. I gotta have my personal feelings about it, but I'll keep my mouth shut.
All right, appreciate